Okay. Yeah, so I had the good fortune of being a cameraman one day randomly on this project that was started by somebody else, and they were a very busy commercial director who just didn't have time to see the project through. Any of you who've made a documentary before know that it takes a long, long time. And they asked me if I'd take the project on, and it wasn't necessarily it was subject matter that I was interested in, but it definitely wasn't something I was an expert on. So I took it on because I'm always open to any project if I have the time, but it was a huge learning experience for me. So even just, this project started 2.5 years ago, and just getting it through to the end is, it's like, it's in some ways more difficult than birthing a child, because that only lasts 9 months. This is could be very, very long. Yeah, sorry, Mom.
Well, that's okay. As a fellow filmmaker, I know the fact that every one of these is your child.
Yeah. So, and then it's just like it's one of those places. Like Eigenson Farm is a magical place. So, we were on. It was a no-budget documentary, and we were convincing some really talented people to come up and work with us. And all we had to do was bring them there once, and they were more than willing to come back again. It was it's a beautiful place, and it's a restaurant. Like if you're ever in Southern Ontario and you want the most amazing meal of your life and you have a couple $100 to blow, I definitely would recommend going.
Yeah, I know people who save up for a year to go there.
Yeah. It's a really great place, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that man. Like every day I was there, I learned something new, and it was really interesting.
Okay, so anyone in the audience want to ask a question?
It's okay to not ask questions too. Uh-oh, there's one.
Go ahead.
I was looking at the kitchen, and everything in there seems to be made by hand. Was that a whole group effort, or was that from the chef, or like the mosaics and the antlers, and just what was like the inside of the space? I wish I could have seen it more.
Yeah. So do we have to repeat the questions for the web or not? Okay. So I think the question was just if everything there was made by hand by the chef and stuff like that. Listen, Michael Statlander is the busiest guy I've ever met in my life. Like shooting a documentary with Michael Statlander was a pain in the butt because I would show up. I would show up at like maybe 8 in the morning. He'd already been working for 3 hours, and I missed everything. So I don't know, like hopefully you couldn't tell it because of the editing, but there's a lot of the process there that we never even captured because he would just get stuff done constantly. So yes, everything there is made by hand. He's got another restaurant in Singhampton in the town where everything is just made by hand, carved by him and his apprentices. It's beautifully decorated by him and his wife, Nobuyu, with like smashed china from all over the world that they inlay in the walls. And everything's just like, it's like, there's this term that I was introduced to by his potters called wabi-sabi, which is this Japanese term of like, this kind of craziness with some underlying order to it. So like you go there and it's absolutely eclectic. It's a mess. It's something that would never work in your house if you tried it, but there it totally works. And it's the most beautiful kitchen in the world to cook in. It's just got beautiful natural light. It's got these giant counters, and it's just kind of a dream kitchen for anyone who loves cooking.
Anybody else?
Just another one right
Yeah,
there.
right there.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, it was a 3-hour meal where you go from like 7 different courses, and I believe it was $140 and maybe $200 if it included wine with pairings. So I don't necessarily go out for meals that are that expensive, but from my understanding, meals like those at Michelin restaurants usually run you a lot more. So it's and for the amount of effort that's going into it, it seems rather reasonable. It's up to you where you want to spend your money necessarily. But I will say that I don't think anybody walked away from any of those meals disappointed.
Did they get to keep those, the menus that they had printed up? They were the mementos from the
Yeah,
dinner?
I believe so. There was those orange cards and the posters that everyone got, but I think there were also like handwritten menus every day because everything changed a little bit every day, you know. So and I think there was a handwritten menu that chef made every single day, and I think he like wrote it out 40 times. If it wasn't him every day, then his apprentices too. But they had that as a take-home menu as well.
He does have a few apprentices.
Yeah, he usually like keeps like between 6 and 12 apprentices there, and it's like. They're all very young chefs, and they learn a lot more than just cooking. Like they're learning how to plant, how to raise animals, husbandry, everything. And it's like, if I had a spare 6 months, I'd like to go and work there and donate my time because you really learn everything. Does anyone remember what it says? I think it ran for 20. I think it ran over 30, maybe 20 dinners over 30 days.
Right at the back?
Are the apprentices from all over the world, or are they Canadian?
Yeah, I'd say. Yeah, I'd say the apprentices are mostly Canadian, but there are definitely international people there. Like his restaurant that he ran in town, which was only about a 10-minute drive away, was being run by 2 Germans that were from a kitchen that he had worked from in Germany. Like. He has so many international connections with other chefs, and he's such a unique man that chefs send their best and brightest to him to kind of get like a crash course in how to do all these amazing things. Like this man is like 20 years ahead of the curve always when it comes to like biodiversity, biodynamic, organic farming. This is stuff that he was doing in the 80s. It's stuff that he learned in the 70s, and stuff that obviously we've all clicked into in the last 10 years. But this guy was just like. This guy has taught so many people, and there's restaurants all over the world that are filled with chefs that he's taught, which is like I think the greatest compliment to him because there's so many chefs around the world who owe everything they do to him, and he's rather humble about it all, which is really beautiful.
I remember the publicity when he first set up the farm, and everybody kept saying, "Oh, it'll never work.
Yeah,
you're not going to find." Supplies there that you need for your restaurant. He says, well, I'll grow it.
Yeah. It would not work with anybody but that man. He's one of a kind for sure. Larger than life.
Anybody else? Right back there?
I'd like to know what the timeline would be to make a reservation to go down there.
Yeah, that's a good question. They kind of shut down for the winter generally for obvious reasons because they're not trucking anything on trucks. But I think that there's anywhere, sometimes I think it's up to a 6-month wait, but I think you kind of like call in January and you hope to get a spot sometime that summer. And then once all the slots are filled, they're filled. Yes. Drop my name.
Right in front.
What's the most difficult part of shooting that? I mean, there's some aerial shots that you have, and is there anything that was particularly difficult?
Yeah, we had the good fortune of, like there's so much more to this story that we had to leave out of the movie just for trying to make it as compact a unit as possible. So we had a potter. The guy who actually makes all the plates that you see there was his potter, who actually also happened to be a Cessna pilot. So he took us up a couple times, and he's the best pilot I've ever flown with. So that was amazing. I'd say the most challenging thing was, like I alluded to it earlier, was just like shooting chef. Like this was a project that I was doing. I work in commercial film and stuff like that in Toronto. So it was like I had to be running up there, and then like whenever I could find some time, and I had to grab people and equipment and throw them into the car, and then I like show up, like, and I haven't been there in a week, and everything's changed, like full fields have been torn up and replanted, and all these everything's constantly in flux around there. The man works 18 hours a day, so that was definitely the biggest challenge, was trying to keep up with Michael. He's a tour, I should say a force of nature. Another one right there.
Does he have any plans to offer a similar setting like that again in the future?
Yeah, so this is one, like he has meals inside of his farmhouse that he seats about 40 people a week in his restaurant. But once every summer he does big projects like these. So this this was the biggest thing that he'd undertaken in terms of really spreading it out over his 100 acres. But he's always doing really interesting projects. He also turns over his farm to other chefs to do fundraisers and stuff like that. So like in the wintertime, sometimes I was actually like the first time I was introduced to the whole concept was through my sister who lived nearby at the time, and she had gone there in the wintertime where everyone shows up with their cross-country skis and you go from like station to station all over the farm, and someone's preparing you a little meal, and then you bring your own wine. It's always bring your own wine at his place, which is really nice, and he has just like these fields littered with empty wine bottles. It's a very, very eclectic, old-school hippie hangout. So he does have apprentices who are helping him out, but, these apprentices, if you ask him, he'll say they're worthless. Like, a lot of them are just like 20-year-old kids. And he's out there planting and weeding and birthing calves and slaughtering chickens, and whatever used to happen on a farm 150 years ago, it's happening there.
Yeah.
I think I saw him.
Right at the back?
Yeah.
Were you the only one who actually took over that project, or someone else had tried to do it? Or were you just a pioneer when it comes to this particular?
Oh, to this project? So one of my producers was the original director, David Hicks, a very successful commercial director in Canada. And so I took over the project for him by myself, which involved asking favors of hundreds of people, some of whom are in this room right now. But yeah, if you didn't like it, then I'm the only one to blame. All right.
Anybody else?
Okay, great. Oh, hopefully sometime soon. This is something that was only kind of wrapped up very recently, and you guys are the first people in the world to see it before my cast and crew have even seen it. So thank you for being a nice test audience. And we definitely hope to have it available for rent and to view, and hopefully, we hope that it'll be on TV somewhere soon.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming.